Hey everybody, Bearded Rogue here, and today I want to talk to you about a game called Guild Masters. This is going to be released by Mirrorbox Games. They're the guys who brought us Chaosmos. As you can see, the artwork on this is pretty amazing. But this is going to be going up on Kickstarter soon. I was fortunate enough to be sent a prototype version of the game to play around with, play test, have some fun with, and they told me that I could talk to you guys about it. Since I really enjoyed the game, spoiler alert, I'm more than happy to talk to you guys about it, and I wanted to show off some of the stuff. Keep in mind that the stuff that I'm showing off is prototype components. This is not the finished production quality version of the game, so expect some of the artwork, the graphic design, that sort of stuff to change. The prototype that I have is fully functional. All of the stuff that's in the final game, to my knowledge, is in the prototype. So I'll be able to give you a good impression of what it's like. So the first thing I want to show off is this board right here. So this board, aside from being gorgeous, and I'm given to understand that this board will actually be a little bit larger in the final version of the game, so that things aren't quite as cramped. Has spaces for pretty much everything. So none of the stuff in this game is going to be sitting off to the side around the board, clogging up your table. It will all fit on this board. So they took the opportunity to make the board really large and really beautiful. So we have various spaces. As I said, the different tokens are in the various spaces, so all the resources have their own spaces on the map that are appropriately colored. So you've got the basic resources of cloth, leather, wood, and iron. You've got the two advanced resources of magic and gems. You've got an area down here for the different treasure cards. You've got an area here for the different quests that you can complete. All of the money goes on this central castle, which, if I can get the glare to go away, on the central castle. You've got your different workers that you can hire here. You've got different rooms that you can acquire to add to your guild. Either the basic rooms that are pretty much always available, the chambers, which are specifically keyed off of workers, and then the only thing that sits off the top of this right now are the halls, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But I just wanted to show off this board. All of the charts from the rule book telling you how to set it up are in and directly on the board. So setup is actually really easy. You don't really have to reference the rule book or anything based on player count. It does play 2 to 5, if you can see the different chart right here telling you how many of each resource disc to use. It does play 2 to 5. I can say that I've played it at 4-player twice. I've played it at 2-player twice now. That's the extent of my plays at this point. I want to try and get in some plays at other player counts. I think 3-player will be really good, actually, based on the mechanics of the game. And I think 5 will probably work as a very, very tight game as well. Though it does scale with players. There's more resources the more players, there's more rooms available for more players, that sort of thing. But we'll get into that in a second. So, one of the things that I most love about a game is when they include a reference card that is extremely useful. And these guys have done that. This is probably the most useful reference card I've ever seen. It shows the different actions that you can take on one side, and then on the other side, it specifically shows you what all scores in the game. So with the setup stuff on the player board and the reference cards, there's very little that you will need to reference in the rule book once you're at the table. Everything's pretty self-explanatory with just the card. The rule book also, just to be extra helpful, on the back has a symbols key in case you don't know what the icons mean or what the specific workers do. All of the workers have their own little special abilities, and this demystifies that. All of the iconography in this game is very well done. It's very self-explanatory. Once you know what the icons for all of the resources are and what that means, you will be able to pretty much decipher what these icons mean without even looking at the rulebook. You'll just go, okay, what do I think this worker does? And then you'll look at the rulebook and find out you were right. So very intuitive iconography in the game, even with the less than finished graphic design and artwork. But as you can see here, this game has 3 things that you can do on your turn. And each person will take 1 action on their turn, and then it will move to the next player. So turns go like rapid fire around the table. Like, there's a possibility that what the person right in front of you did will change what you do on your turn. But because there are only 3 actions, there's a very limited space for decision making. And because the game is finite, once the deck of quest cards runs out, everybody gets 1 more turn and the game's over. There's only so many actions you get to take in the game overall. So each action is very important, but there's a limited list of things that you can do, which makes it so that while it is an important decision, it's not usually a very it's so funny. A very analysis paralysis inducing one. So funny that I would get stuck on analysis paralysis. But so, actions you can do on your turn. So the first action is gathering resources. And as I said, all the resources will hang out on these resource spots on the board. And you can do 2 things, as you can see right here. You can either take 2 different resources. So I could take one of these wood discs and one of these cloth discs, for example. Or you can take 3 resources that are the same. So I could take these 3 wood discs, for example. Now, the resources that I take have to go onto my player board. And as you can see, I only have 5 spaces to store resources. There are some generic buildings like warehouses and some workers that can give me space for additional resources, but this is very much a tempo type resource management game like Splendor in that regard. These are obviously the reverse of Splendor. In Splendor you only get 3 chips if they're all different, and you only get 2 if they're the same. So this is the opposite, because in this game, diversity really helps you. Diversity gives you much more options. So unlike Splendor, where every card costs just higher numbers of the same colored thing, these are much more diverse things that you have to complete. So the reversing of the mechanism in Splendor actually works really well here, and reduces the just, like, if you can count, then you can manage the resources in this game. There's not a lot of math inside of this game. The most math you will get is determining how much money you are paying for certain things, or how much money you're receiving with certain bonus cards. So there's not a lot of math. There is counting, and there is this tempo-based resource management system, which I love it in Splendor. It is really well used here. Splendor, the entire game, it could be argued, is that system. That's really it. It's just the mechanisms. This actually integrates it into a game in a fashion that really fits as part of the game. It doesn't feel like it's bolted on or separate from the game itself. It really feels like part of the game, and it makes sense. So the next option you have is craft. So here's where you'll use your resources to actually complete quests. So I haven't said this before, but in Guildmasters, you are a guild. And you are trying to basically up the prestige of your guild. Let me go ahead and read this because it's actually really well written. The Alder Swamps are teeming with magical riches, but also infested with the deadliest of monsters, the Briarlights. King Dalian has claimed the swamp's treasures for his free city of Temen and now calls for the eradication of the Briarlights. The city's most skilled and prestigious guild hall will be awarded a royal warrant and the right to all the riches of the Alder Swamps for the crown. So all of you are now trying to prove that you have the best adventurers, that you're the best guild, and that you deserve, you know, the monopoly on exploiting this specific region that has been annexed to the kingdom. So in order to do that, you will be completing quests. So there are 2 types of quests in the game. And again, all the artwork is placeholder. All of these icons for the items, I'm given to understand, will be replaced by actual artwork for the magical items later on. But what you need to know about this is there are 2 types of quest cards. I'm going to hold them like this. So there's single item quest cards, wherein you're manufacturing 1 item for your adventurers so they can complete a quest. Or there are double item quest cards, wherein there are 2 items that need to be manufactured. So in a single item quest card, you have the resources you need, so in this case 2 leather and iron, and in this case a gemstone, which is an advanced resource. We'll get to that in a minute. The item itself, again, this will be replaced with artwork. The money reward, the monetary reward that you'll get for completing this item, which you'll use money in various ways, and we'll get to that. The type of item it is, in this case it's an accessory, and the type of hero it goes to, in this case a rogue type hero. In the top corner here is the reward, and all of the quests reward you in treasure cards, and we'll get to those in just a minute, but this is a single item. If I turn in these items, or turn in these resources, when I'm doing a craft option here, then I will make these boots, I will complete this quest, I will get this 6 money, and I will get this card. The 2-item quests, however, have a little bit of a wrinkle to them. So I can complete either one of these items. When I complete one of these items, say I complete this dagger by turning in an iron and a wood, I would get my 3 money as usual, and then I would put one of these little sold markers over this half of the quest. Now, anybody can complete the second half of this quest. It could be me or it could be another person. If I complete the second half of this quest, then I get the money from this half, just like I did from the first half, and I get both of these cards from the top, both of these treasure cards. However, if somebody else comes along and completes this quest, then they would get the money. I, because I went first on this, get to pick which one of these 2 treasure cards I want, and the other player would get the other one. The quest cards themselves are also potentially worth points at the end, based on the type of item it is, or the type of hero it is. In this case, both of them are accessories. This one's also a weapon, and both of them are rogue quests. So the person who completes it first gets to keep the card, and they get to choose which of the 2 treasures they want if it's one of the 2-part quests. Now, if you complete both sides of the quest, then you can go ahead and take both cards. You can also complete both sides of the quest at the same time with one action. So if you can get exactly the resources you need for one of these dual-part quests, you can just complete it outright, much like you can one of these. However, you're not allowed to split up your action. So I can't complete this one and then half of this one with the same action. That would be 2 different actions. So what do these treasure cards look like? So the treasure cards are the primary reward for completing quests, and there are multiple different kinds of treasure cards. They come in 3 different varieties. So, your yellow treasure cards primarily have to do with money. So, you'll get things that give you, like, 3 money. You can just turn this in on your turn at any time for 3 money. Or 4 money. Or there are these items like scrolls, wherein you get 4 money, and then the next player will get 2 money. You can also just sell it for 2 money at any point on your turn. Inside each of these decks, there are also these ancient artifacts. Inside each deck, it'll tell you on the back, this deck, the yellow deck, has the gauntlets and the shield, and I think there are 3 copies of each item in each deck. So these are worth victory points at the end of the game if you collect them set-wise. You can also sell them for 2 money at any point, but if you keep them as a set, they can be worth victory points at the end. There are also some more interesting ones, like gain money for each quest you have, or this treasure map, which lets you actually discard it and another card, and then you can actually just draw 2 treasure cards of any color to kind of filter through. There's, let me see if I can find, yeah, double the money for, that you receive for crafting your next item. So the next item you make, you'll double whatever the normal reward is. And you're not limited to how many of these you can play on your turn, however, you're limited to having only 7 of these in hand. And that's with all of the different treasure cards. So the gold ones have to do with money, primarily, and then the 2 particular artifacts. The blue treasures primarily have to do with resources. So it's similar in nature in that you'll have things that will give you resources. Or, again, the treasure map can be found in this. Or you can gain specific resources. Or there are scrolls in here as well. That will give you resources and give the next player a resource of their choosing. For this one also has the artifacts in it. So in this case, the helm and the armor can be found here. in this deck. So this one's primarily has to do with resources, and then again, the artifacts can be found here. And then last but not least is the red deck, which is the relic deck. Relics are just straight up worth 2 points at the end of the game. They're also 2 money if you wish to get rid of them. All of the relics will be found in here. However, you will also be able to find the ancient boots and ancient sword in this deck. As you can see on the back, the boots and sword are in this deck. So this one is primarily points. Things like double the number of treasure you draw for completing a quest. Or the scroll will be, in this one, is draw 2 treasures of different colors, and then the next player gets the treasure color you didn't choose. Just as examples of what's in these decks. So these are what you get for completing the various quests. So a lot of these are worth victory points in their own right, the relics, the artifacts. However, in every game, there will be a number of these hall buildings, which we'll get more into buildings in a second. But each one of these halls has a particular thing that it cares about. So like 2 points for every quest featuring armor, or 2 points for every accessory, or 2 points for every quest you've completed that has to do with the melee, the fighter type characters. 2 per each room in your guild, which we'll get into in a minute. Rogue characters, 4 for each set of rogue, mage, and warrior. 2 points for every 1 item quest. 2 points per worker. Again, these are all randomized at the start, and only a certain number of them come out based on player count. So it kind of changes up each game and gears you more towards the strategies in this game, which means that you're paying attention to these icons on the bottom of these quest cards. Every quest you complete is 1 victory point in its own right, but it could be worth additional points. For example, if both accessories and weapons are worth points, then this quest is really good. It also gives you, the treasure cards that can be worth various things. The red one may be worth points in its own right. The yellow one may just give you artifacts which are worth points, or it may give you more money, which makes it so that you can continue moving forward and maybe even buy some of these expensive victory point buildings. So, crafting. So that's the second thing you can do, is craft. So you can craft these quests in order to get money and get treasure cards, which you can then use to do what? Well, that gives us our last action, which is the upgrade action. In the upgrade action, you can spend money to either acquire workers and or acquire buildings. So, or rooms for your guild hall, I guess is the best way to put it. So, we've already talked about the halls. All of the halls give you some sort of victory point condition at the end of the game. These are randomized, and only a certain number of them come out. Other buildings that are available are these chambers. Chambers directly interact with workers, so they have these icons on them, and they need to be filled with that type of worker in order to give you the victory points. So in the higher player count games, there are these single ones, and then in the lower player count games, there are these double ones where you need 2 workers in order to trigger their victory points. And these are also just victory points, but they interact directly with the workers. And then last but not least, there are the basic buildings that are in every game. So the warehouse just gives you additional storage space for resources. The Gem Workshop and the Magic Arcanum basically work the same way. One lets you actually collect the gem resource, and one lets you collect the magic resource. Without these buildings, you can't normally take those resources, and some of the various quests require it, like this one right here, for example, needs gems. There are only a certain number of those available in a game. You're never allowed to build 2 rooms that have the same name, so you can't have 2 magic arcanums. And in a 2-player game, you're only allowed to build one or the other. You can only gather gems or magic using rooms. There are other ways, like the resource treasure cards or some of the workers, which will give you access to the special resources as well, but these are in every game. The final room that you will find in every game is the library. And the library is another victory point room, but it gives you bonus points based on scrolls. Scrolls, remember, are those treasure cards that give you something and then also give the next player a benefit. Normally they aren't worth anything except 2 gold if you turn them in, or you can use them and get something and then give somebody else something as well. In this case, you can hold on to them and they're worth 4 points at the end of the game. Again, your treasure card hand limit is 7, so not spending your treasure cards and just kind of hanging on to them does kind of slow you down because you're unlimited in your usage of treasure cards on your turn. But it is a viable strategy. The library is very, very seriously viable strategy. 4 points per scroll can be really good in the end game. So the last thing, other than the rooms, is the workers. So when you do your upgrade, you can get any of those buildings, or you can get one of the workers. So the workers come in different types, and they have the same kind of icons that you saw on the chambers. So, for example, this guy could be in this chamber right here. You don't have to have a chamber to have a worker. You can just hire this worker for his gold cost. He's worth a number of victory points. And then he gives you a special ability. So like this one, when you gather, you get an extra wood, even if you're not gathering wood. So if I were to, say, be gathering this 1 cloth and 1 gem, I could also take a wood for that. Or if I were to be gathering, say, 3 wood, I could take a 4th wood if one was available. So that's what these guys do. They give you the ability all the time once you've acquired them, unless they say otherwise. There are some workers. Let me find one here with the little icon. I think they're mostly in the second half. Here we go. This guy right here has the little lightning bolt icon, which means that his effect happens instantly, and then after that, he just kind of hangs out in your guild. So instantly you get to hire another worker for no cost. He costs you 9, though. But, so the little lightning bolt means that you can hire them, and they instantly do things. Anything else means that they're a permanent thing. And they just kind of hang out in your guild, and if you buy one of the chambers, you can put them in the chamber if it's the appropriate type. So this guy could hang out here in this chamber, and that would make this room worth 7 points at the end of the game, in addition to the 2 points that he already is worth. So these guys can hang out. They're already worth points, but if you put them in chambers, they can be worth more points. And they do various things like enhance your existing actions, like this guy makes your gather slightly better. This one, whenever you complete melee hero card, you get an additional red treasure, for example. This one gives you an always-on ability, which you can do on your turn. You can look at the top card of the quest deck at any time, which will give you an idea of what resources you might need coming up. Or this one right here just has a passive ability that says you can fill chambers with any type of worker. So you can ignore the icons on this, and you can even put this noble worker inside of this laborer chamber, for example. And the workers do all sorts of things that change the game. This guy changes your crafting actions so that you can craft an infinite number of times. Remember how I said you could craft on one card, or you could craft both sides of this card, but you couldn't do both of these at once? Well, this guy changes that. This one lets you gather 3 different resources instead of them all having to be the same. Or this one gives you extra treasures for rogue cards. This one gives you a leather when you gather. This one gives you an extra storage space, like a warehouse, except only one spot. This one gives you a discount whenever you make weapons. This one just gives you a passive ability that whenever you complete a quest with an opponent, you get to choose which treasure you're keeping, instead of whichever person was on the card first. Some of them, here's one for an upgrade. It lets you count the discount on these workers as double what it is. So the way this works, talking about discounts, is that on the board, if I can hold it up here, there's this little track where the workers sit. And so the worker deck is here, and they're all dealt out to here. So if I were to buy this worker, every worker in a spot after them gets a discount of 1 coin on them, until either somebody buys them for their discounted cost, or their cost equals 0, at which point they're discarded and more workers will be dealt out of the deck. So this kind of moves through, and sometimes you may strategically buy things at different places in the row in order to make certain other things go away, or to discount other things for future turns. But the workers will slowly move their way across and either make it to the end and be, not discount to anything after them, and they'll either be purchased, or eventually their discount will hit their price, so in this case 4, and then they would just be discarded from the game, and you wouldn't see them anymore, and then a new one would come out to fill their spot. So the workers all do various things that change the rules of the game, either giving you extra abilities or altering your existing actions in some way, shape, or form. And they're highly useful. They're a pretty good source of points, and one of the halls, of course, gives you victory points for these guys as well. So the game will kind of proceed with each player taking an action. I'll take an action, you'll take an action, next person will take an action, it'll come back to me, and we'll just keep going through that, and we'll be completing quests over time. Once we get to the end of the first section of quests, Quest 1, we'll end up with this King's Herald card that will come into play. And this King's Herald card, everybody will then secretly bid an amount of money, and whoever bids the most will get these 4 victory points, which is a decent amount of victory points. If everybody ties, then nobody gets it, but you get to keep your money. If nobody bids at all, everybody ties, and you get to keep your money. Whoever didn't bid the highest gets to keep their money anyway. But 4 victory points is pretty good. So this is often something that, about the halfway point of the game, people will be trying to decide whether or not 4 victory points is worth gambling their hard-earned cash on. Usually it is, in my experience. But this is signifies about the halfway point of the game, and transitions you from the level 1 quests to the level 2 quests, which usually are worth more money and usually require more resources to complete. Then, at the end of the game, the very last card in the deck will be this King card. And the King card, once this comes out, then every player gets 1 more turn. And on that turn, they can do whatever they want, but one of the actions they can take is to put one of their sold markers on this card so that their resources are worth victory points and their money is worth victory points. Every now and then, this isn't worth it. Sometimes it's better off to acquire one of the halls or one of the other things that will give you more bonus points than this will. But every now and then you'll have stocked up and you'll be ready for the game to go 1 more turn, and then somebody cuts it just short. So this kind of gives you a way to make victory points on all that stuff you were stockpiling in anticipation of making your big move. And it's a pretty welcome thing when it turns up. It's not always the best option to take your action for this, but it's a pretty cool thing when it does happen. The only other thing to really say is that each player has their own unique guild with their own unique starting ability. One starts with a quest already in their thing, which is basically a victory point and some icons that they start with. You will have seen the various halls that are available in this game, so you'll be able to pick the one based on which one will score you victory points. Or which one will best go towards the strategy currently present in the game. So this is a pretty cool one. This one right here lets you start with 2 cloth, a leather and a cloth, or 2 leather. This one is the same thing, except it's for iron and wood, 2 wood, an iron and a wood, or 2 iron. That normally is good enough to complete one of the early quests in the level 1 deck. So normally you'll end up with a bit of a resource advantage there. The Merchants of Myr just start with 4 money, which is pretty damn good. Usually lets them get a worker or a building pretty quickly, start gathering advanced resources. And last but not least is the Band of Builders, which starts with 6 resource spots instead of 5, which looks somewhat weaker than the other abilities, but since most of the quests take a certain number of resources to complete, this is actually subtly powerful. You can actually do 2 full gather actions of resources and gain 6 resources and have enough space to store them, which the other guilds just cannot do at the beginning of the game. And everybody will get their randomized guild. Everybody will see what the board setup is. Everybody will gather resources and complete quests and gather treasures and use those to acquire new rooms for their guild hall, making it more opulent and awesome, and thereby try to impress the king. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most prestige, which are the victory points in the game, that person wins. Pretty typical Euro game. So that's how you play. What do I think about it? Well, I already said that I liked the game. So what is it that I like about the game? Well, first of all, it's a medium weight Euro game. It's very medium weight in the fact that there's not a lot of arithmetic necessary. It's not heavily mathy. There is some math in calculating, will this get me more victory points than this? But for the most part, it's just managing a small amount of resources, so it's not really brain-burny. It's very medium-weight Euro. The Splendor style tempo-based resource management is really awesome. I love it in Splendor, and it's really well utilized here. I've never seen another game use it. I expect we'll start seeing it pop up more and more as time goes on, but it's really well done here and really well integrated into the game. The quests are a little bit Lords of Waterdeep-ish. They're set collection type quests. Gather the resources, complete the quest, get treasures. Treasures aren't necessarily victory points directly in this game, however. Some of them are, but most of them just give you the option to get better victory points. And so it's kind of a multi-step process, but these kind of remind me of Lords of Waterdeep or other set collection games. It's really neat because you can see what everybody's gathered. The only thing that's hidden information in this game is what treasures are in someone's hand. So you can kind of see which quests people might be going for and which resources you could grab. And again, in the Splendor resource type mechanism, you can actually grab all of the resources of a type to ensure that somebody cannot complete that quest without doing something sneaky, like using a discount or a worker or some other thing that gives them a way to do it. So there's a way to actually control the board a bit using the resource system, and because all of the quests that can be completed are visible face up on the table. The integration of everything is really tight. Like, it's a really tight game. Workers interact with the buildings, interact with the resource gathering, interact with the quests, and all of them kind of feed into each other. You'll very much see that your turns will be very tempo-based. Like, I'm going to complete this quest now so that I can get my sold marker on it first, so I get first choice of the treasure because I really want red treasure because I'm collecting relics, or because I really want yellow treasure because the 2 artifacts that I need are in the yellow deck and I need to dig through it as much as I can. So I want to make sure that I get the treasure that I want, and it doesn't hurt that I'm also getting some money. Eventually, maybe nobody else completes this, and I have to go complete it myself in order to make sure that happens. And those are all valid things that can happen in the course of a game. Other people may say, I don't want to help him complete quests because I think they're ahead, so we'll make them work a little bit harder for it, but that limits their options to what's on the table that isn't that. The turns just fly by. Because, as I said, there's only 3 things you can choose to do on your turn. It's very much, okay, I have no money. Obviously, I'm not going to be hiring any workers. I'm not going to be upgrading any buildings. So I'm either gathering resources or crafting. Do I have any resources? Well, I have resources. Let's see if I can craft something. Do I have enough resources? No, let's go ahead and gather some resources. Which some would say makes it predictable what people are going to do, but at the same time, around the middle of the game, everybody has enough special abilities from workers and enough different abilities from rooms they've acquired or the amount of resource space that they have to hold resources that you could kind of guess what someone's going to do, but you're taking a gamble that, okay, they don't have enough money, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave that room out there one more turn. And then they unload a whole bunch of cards from their hand to get enough money to buy that room right out from underneath you. So the fact that even though there's only a little bit of hidden information in these treasure cards, it's enough to allow for that kind of sniping, taking things out from underneath people, or having a stronger position than you're actually showing people. So you can give the air of predictability. But it also narrows the decision curve down. So while it may look a little bit predictable, sometimes predictability is good in players not getting lost and knowing what they can or should do on their current turn. There's a healthy amount of these different halls that change up each game. So what is worth victory points at the end is a little bit different each time. The chambers, which are always present, give people a method to acquire victory points, even if they aren't specifically able to get in on the action of particular halls, or the hall that they want has been sniped out from under them. The chambers are available for that and are worth really good victory points. I've seen people collect the relics out of the red deck. I've seen people collect artifacts out of each of the decks. I've seen people specifically try to gear their strategy only towards the halls in play. I've seen people try to rush just workers and chambers and try to score all their victory points by filling up chambers in their guild hall. All of those are totally viable. I don't think there is a specific way to win the game. The only thing right now that even at all concerns me is the library. It seems like it's a little bit of a win more thing, but not like broken. Just if you're winning, you're going to grab a library and then hang on to scrolls because 4 points per scroll is a really good rate of return. In addition, not spending the scrolls means you're not getting that benefit, but you're also not giving it to the next player either. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. But this is the only building that I'm a little bit worried on personally. But other people have played the game and not found it to be a problem. So it may just be my play group has some groupthink going on. I will say that some of my friends who are more traditional Euro gamers, while they really like all the mechanisms, did not like the treasure card rewards because these are randomized and because you could end up with handfuls of things that are just points early. You may not have the ability to drop down 3 or 4 treasure cards in order to extend a turn or to make a surprise action in the middle of the game. And while that possibility is there for every player, some of them it wasn't to their taste, that the rewards were a little bit randomized. Obviously, when you complete, you know which deck you're going for, so there is knowledge of what the risk you're taking is. You know what's in each of these decks. So while it is kind of random what specific card you get out of the decks, none of the cards in here are useless. All of them, like even the ones that are just victory points in the early game, they're still worth victory points. 2 victory points is pretty good in a game where most people are scoring around 50-ish, based on what all's going on. So 2 victory points isn't too shabby in that regard, when all you have to do is hang on to it. Even then, you can just pitch it for 2 money at any point, so it's not like you're stuck with it and it just clogs your hand. Like I said, some of the people in the group didn't like that. To me, it doesn't bother me at all. I think the risk mitigation is part of it, and I think the fact that it is kind of a grab bag, what you get out of them, makes it so that the fact that they're your hidden information makes for more exciting play in the game. Because you don't know exactly what I have. You can see the backs of the cards. I have these red cards. Are they all relics, or are they all cards that are going to let me draw additional treasure cards and suddenly have a gigantic string of actions that will let me sneak something out from underneath you, or end the game a turn faster than you'd like it to? You don't know exactly. So I think it keeps the game exciting. So I personally really enjoy that. Other than that, it's a really solid game. These are just the prototype components, and they're already high quality. Obviously, some of the artwork is just icons at this point and will be replaced and fancied up, and I think everything will end up looking pretty similar to the rule book as far as how gorgeous it is. And yeah, it's a really great little medium weight Euro game. Mirrorbox has done a great job with this. When you see it up on Kickstarter, I personally will be backing this one. I think it's a great medium weight Euro, and any game that lets me have a little bit of flavor of Caverna in building my guild, Splendor in managing my resources in a tempo based way, and Lords of Waterdeep in completing quest cards without having to play all three of those games in one night. Is pretty damn good. Like, 90-minute medium weight Euro game gives me a little bit of all three of those games, which are really high on my list of games that I personally enjoy. So yeah, check it out, guys, when it's up on Kickstarter. Bearded Rogue, signing off.